Yep.
You want me to get things going?
Yep.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Everybody green?
Green.
Is your mic green? Green. Okay.
Today we're having a joint meeting of the Design Review Committee and the City Planning Commission. We have two waterfront conditional use applications that are under review today. We're going to start the meeting off with the Design Review Committee. And then after the Design Review Committee has had their opportunity to review the projects and make recommendations, then we'll open the City Planning Commission meeting and go from there. So Design Review first, Mr. Spiker.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me now? Any better? It's okay.
Well, I think these are on just
Yeah,
for the online stuff.
They are on.
They're on
The
at
volume
YouTube?
might be a little down.
I'll try to talk up. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this. We have waterfront conditional approvals for several different items on the bayfront, all related to activities at Harbor Place. So, Mike, do you want to?
There we go.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to explain the various items that we're going to consider today?
Sure thing. I'm Mike Sanford, 4721 Atlantic Avenue, and I'm the surveyor that prepared the plans before you today. We did present these as two applications, one for mini golf and one for the Soaring Eagle. Would you like me to go through them each separately?
Yes, please.
Okay, then first would be the mini golf. I'll just go through a few things about the project. I'm joined today by Nick Scott and Nick Scott. They can certainly answer any questions about the project as well. But the first before you is a conditional use waterfront district for the mini golf. And it's located at the northern end of the property. Did you give them the large drawings?
Yes.
Okay. So it's located at the north end of the property, down near the water's edge. Mr. Scott does not own property directly adjoining the water's edge. That's owned by the Port Authority, but it is down the northern end of his property. And WC districts, as you know, do support recreational uses. They are listed as a permitted use, as a conditional use, so that's why we're here today. So I know that the zoning office put together a little checklist of the project. We also submitted a narrative showing how we comply with Section 306 with each of the various items. And I just, just for brevity, I'll just go through this briefly, and certainly we can answer any questions. The first item in 306 is public access. And if we do have access to the water, we have an obligation to provide that. But we don't have direct frontage on the water, so that's not applicable in this case. Next is that the buildings need to meet setbacks, coverage, density. They need to also be, architecturally themed and harmonious with the development. Down at the mini golf, there's, of course, going to be like a ticket booth or a clubhouse building, very small in nature. We do show it on the drawing. I did take a photograph of the existing Hampton Inn Hotel. The plan is to make it architecturally themed, both color and texture. So it's a very small building, as I said, a ticket booth shown on the drawing. As far as lighting goes, there's existing lighting down in the development, both around the hotel and the parking lots. And so I took a photograph of that. We intend to have the exact same lighting theme as well. So from a structure and building standpoint, we're consistent with the existing theming down there. As far as exterior space goes, we are required to, be in scale with the development down there. This is mini golf. Other than the clubhouse, everything's really at grade. So we are in scale. And there's no effect to the bluff views with the mini golf. As far as landscaping goes, Mr. Scott hired Dahlkemper Landscape Architects to prepare a plan. It is submitted there, and Dahlkemper's really themed the proposed plan off the existing features that are down there, with the plant type, the spacing, the types, everything. And incorporated also, Mr. Scott, if you, I took a photograph, it's on the drawing, of his rope fence. It's a nautical themed fence, and he wants to extend that as well. So it's a nautical theme, landscaped by Dahlkemper to be compliant with your ordinance. As I mentioned, plant types as well. And then the parking lots, we're going to be expanding the parking lots with this project. Technically, that does not require conditional use approval because they're existing, we're just expanding them. But just to show you what we're doing, we did put everything on the plan to show where the parking lots will be expanded. They'll be landscaped in exact accordance with the ordinance. We actually have more planting area than required. We have the same plant types, same plant spacing, and everything involved in that, and the lighting, of course. So, I mean, like I said, we're here to answer any questions you may have. We certainly look forward to a recommendation from the design review so we could move on to Planning Commission. And again, this is just specific right now to mini golf, and we can talk about the Soaring Eagle zip line here momentarily.
Jake, do we want to handle each a separate motion for each? Is that appropriate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that would be appropriate.
Does anybody have questions for Mr. Sanford? Concerns related to the project?
I want to see if Mr. Scott had anything to add.
Okay. No? Can there be, anybody willing to make a motion to break the recommendation to the Planning Commission?
Yeah, I make a motion that we move forward to the planning commission.
We make a recommendation.
Gotcha, I got it.
Okay. Second?
A second.
Okay. Having a motion and second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you
Okay.
kindly for that.
Yep.
So
Now
we'll-
if we move on to the,
Move on to the Soaring Eagle.
right,
So on the plan, we,
Excuse me.
Hello.
Jake? Dan Dahlkemper has his hand up. And he put
Dan,
something in the
Dan,
chat.
if you
Just
can
wanted to
hear
make
me.
sure you saw that.
Please unmute.
Yeah, hey Jake, this is Dan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the only thing was when I look at the plans there, it just the landscape looked a little bit light on the inside of that putt area. Are there some plans for that in that area?
okay, Dan, this is Mike Sanford, and Mr. Scott, Nick can talk as well as if I don't answer your question adequately. With our application, we submitted a couple of drawings and illustrations from the Adventure Golf website, the course he's going to purchase. And again, he wants a nautical theme, so he has river rock in between the holes. I acknowledge there's not a lot of plants there, but the theme he's going for is river rock, and then to the edging around the pool, around the holes, he has as landscape pavers. So the two illustrations in the upper right-hand corner do illustrate what he's planning. Of course, like an AstroTurf type hole, AstroTurf between the holes, and again with the river rock. And now surrounding that, he does plan to do the rope fence. And we do have plantings around the perimeter of showing the landscape plan, but within the course, it's essentially river rock and turf.
anything else?
Dan, did you have any other comments?
No, that's the only one I have at this point. I'll use the chat box because the sound isn't very good for me.
Okay, yes, I see that. Thank you.
Do you want to continue, Mike?
So moving on to
Yeah, move on.
zip line. Okay, the next conditional use application, again, is commercial recreation. This is for the so-called Soaring Eagle zip line. He has another, at the Peak and Peak, he has one very, very, very similar. Essentially, it's a, it's a zip line, so there's a high post and a low post. This zip line's unique, similar to the Peak, where you actually load at the low end of the zip line. You load at this northern end here, You load in the platform, and you're pulled backwards up, in this case south, you'd be pulled backwards up to the high point, and then released and come back down to the north. So you have a view looking at the water. So the high post, or the high support, is near the Bayfront Parkway, and that's about 130 feet tall. And the landing platform, loading and unloading, is at the northern end, and that's 25 or so feet tall. So this is a conditional use because it's commercial recreation. Similar to the last application, there is no direct frontage on the water, so no public access directly required. And as far as the structures go, other than the ticket booth that we talked about in the last application, there really is no structure other than this loading platform at the northern end and the tall pole at the southern end. We did put an elevation view on there just so you could see the tall pole and the wires as they go in a north direction. Obviously, that does cross East Front Street aerially, and we did talk to city engineering about an aerial easement. Jason is here, and that's something that the city has granted in the past for other, not for a zip line, but other projects, an aerial easement. So from a structure standpoint, there is very limited structures with the zip line. It's essentially a loading platform and a pole. As far as blocking any view of the bluff, it's just a pole at the southern end. It's not a building per se, and it's very small horizontal footprint. As landscaping, we do, on the landscaping plan, we do have landscaping around the southern pole, the tall pole, for the ground plantings, as well as in the parking lots, as I mentioned before. As I mentioned before, we do have expanding parking lots, not technically part of your review, but we did show it to you how the parking lots would be expanded in landscape. So we do understand that is, needs a variance for the height. That's something we'll talk to the Planning Commission subsequently. But we're hoping from a design review perspective that this, that we've incorporated what the ordinance requires, and we would look forward to your recommendation.
We do have a question from Mr. Dahlkemper regarding an access walkway to the clubhouse area and to the base of the zip line. How's that going to be accommodated?
It is shown. It's shown probably better on the landscaping plan, where the clubhouse building is shown just south of the mini golf. There's a east-west running sidewalk where you would, buy your ticket for either feature, and then be able to walk east over to the loading platform, and then you'd get on. And as I mentioned, you load there and unload there. So you would use that east-west running sidewalk.
Thank you.
So it looks like they get pulled up from the low side to the high side, like a ski lift or something, I suppose, or
Exactly.
a J-bar or something.
Yep, you're in a seated position, 2 seats, and you literally get pulled backwards up, and then when you get to the very top, then you're released and come back down again.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering, because I was thinking like, walking across the Bayfront Highway to climb up it, that wouldn't work.
Yeah, no,
So,
everything
I
happens
guess that
right there
doesn't
from the
happen,
northern
yeah.
end. Loading,
Okay.
unloading, everything, right
Yeah,
there.
okay.
What hours are intended for these 2 attractions to operate? Yeah.
The Soaring Eagle, as well as the golf, would most likely run, probably at 11 in the morning. The golf, I would say some of this depends on the business and the market, but 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Our beer garden typically during the week closes around 10. On the weekends, I think we're open till 11:30, midnight, depending on the weather and the crowd and so forth. But I would say they'd almost mimic ours a little bit, but because this is a family daytime event, when sometimes we didn't open the beer garden maybe necessarily till 4, this would most likely open at 11 to get families down to the Bayfront during the time the kids are awake and so forth. And then the Soaring Eagle, I think, would be very similar to that as well. The Soaring Eagle, you were talking about, just to answer the zip line question, it's actually a unique ride, and one of the things about the ride is it allows for different ages to ride it, where some people don't like to put a harness on and be hung from a wire. This one, you actually sit in a seat and have a seatbelt on. And so anyone from 5 years old to 90 years old can ride this. And so it's a little more, the market's open to basically really anybody to ride it. And you go backwards, like you said, and there's only one entrance point and one exit point.
You know, I have another question. You know, I'm just thinking, I mean, how, this has been cleared with the police, I presume, as far as something going over a, you know, a highway. I don't know if there's
We aren't going over the highway,
rules.
It's north of the Bayfront.
so we're just going to the Bayfront Highway.
Oh, you're not over
No,
the
we're not going
Bayfront.
over the highway.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
Okay. You mentioned it exceeds the 50 feet height limit. I recall as part of the approvals for the hotel that there was a blanket zoning variance given to exceed the 50-foot height limit that required dedication, identification of additional green space for public use. Are you aware of that, Mike?
Yes, open space.
Huh?
Yes.
Open
Yeah.
space, yeah.
Correct, yes, that was part of the zoning hearing board's adjudication for the building height.
Okay.
1 square foot of open space per floor area square footage above the 50 feet.
Okay.
Correct.
And so, my question, I think, to Jake is, doesn't that grant them the exception to the 50-foot height limit?
Well, because this is considered a new use, and it's on a separate parcel, that's the reason we're here today. It's not really considered an accessory use to the hotel, so it wouldn't be included in the previous decision for the hotel height exception.
Boy, I think my recollection is that was all one parcel at the time that exception was granted.
I think you're right that the entire master plan area
Right.
actually did involve several parcels on both sides of East Front. But I don't know that I'll have to research the exact terminology because it's most likely just specific to that building. It wouldn't apply to any other structures.
I don't have a copy with me.
Yeah.
It's been a few weeks since I've read it, but I did read it, and there was some discussion at the zoning hearing board that there was multiple buildings that would exceed the 50 feet.
Right.
I think it might have talked about 2 hotels, it actually talked about them potentially being 12 stories. It ended up only being 8.
Yeah.
So there was some discussion. But that's a good point. Certainly today we're here at Design Review Planning Commission, and I
Right.
had talked to Jake about a variance should it be required. The deadline to submit that is next week, but certainly between this meeting and next, I can research that a little further to see and talk to Jake if a variance is required or if it's already been addressed.
Right.
But that's a good point.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for them? Dan, do you have a question?
Dan, I can read off the question from the chat. Dan was stating that the original master plan for the campus area, if you will, included 2 hotels, and ice skating rink, and he was just wondering if those plans are still in place.
I'll let Nick talk about the,
Yeah, thanks, Dan. The second hotel is still something we would like to do in the future. We just finished opening the first one, and we opened it during COVID, so we're trying to, hoping that business comes back. A lot of the corporate traveler is not back yet, so we're really not, we don't think that opening a second hotel in the next year is in the best interest, but hopefully things turn around, and maybe in a year or two, we come back to the table and put the hotel in. The ice skating rink is something that we think is definitely something in the future that we could look at. There's a pretty large expense to do that. Again, that was another thing. It was sort of on the books during COVID, and we kind of shelved that idea as well because you weren't allowed to congregate, and so we thought maybe we'd hold off on that. But I still think it's on the drawing board to come probably in the next year or two. So it's not off of the idea list and the plan for sure.
Thank you.
Is that the only question Dan had?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you allowed to take questions from the audience? Because it
Yes.
doesn't have that on your.
Ed?
If I may, if you can hear me, Ed Kissel. The Scots agreed to, in the hotel, with beyond the recommended height, the first hotel, that the zoning hearing board, I believe, granted them permission to go up to the height they're at with the stipulation that a percentage of their green space be increased per the height of the building. And I believe they agreed to it at the time to have, I don't know, 60% or 40% of your space on the north side of Front Street. Nothing was said about the parking lot on the the south side of green space. So I'm just bringing that up. Now, that was 8 years ago or so when that took place. I believe it was Lisa Austin who recommended, and the Scott organization agreed to create as much green space over and above what was planned because of the zoning allotment for building a hotel higher. If they remember that, I don't recall, but you can look the record up, and what they're doing is great. I mean, the flat visibility allows people at least to see the water more than some other developments that are taking place. So I just bring that up for the information of the board.
Yeah. And Mike is going to address that with Jake in the next coming week or so.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ed. Any
Thank
other
you, Ed.
comments? Anytime anybody want to make a motion for approval?
Yeah, I make a motion for approval that we move it forward to what, this goes to the planning
Commission,
or
right.
planning commission next, okay? With the, the considerations we discussed.
Second? Second? We have a second? Anybody, all in favor the motion to recommend move it to the planning commission? Say aye. Aye.
Okay.
You didn't say anything.
So are you adjourning?
Is there nothing else to discuss? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second? All in favor of adjournment for the planning, for the design review committee? Say aye.
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 All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Design Review Committee members.
pass that on.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, good.
We good, Jake? See us up? No? We good? Okay. All right, welcome everybody to the City Planning Commission for March 15th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And Mark Klecker here. Richard?
Speaking. Here.
Jason?
Here.
Tony was absent, or she's absent, correct?
Yep.
And Amanda as an alternate, and Colin, I think are both. Are they on or are they
And
absent?
Colin is here.
Colin is, thank you, Colin. Nathan, Richard, okay. Has everybody read the minutes from February? Anybody have any questions or corrections on the minutes from February? Our February meeting?
Nope.
And I would like a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right.
Aye.
Back to number 3, the review of the waterfront conditional use application. Obviously, we just sat through all of that, and I think it, on our side, it pretty much comes down to the, the height thing that you're gonna work on and with Jake, and then you'll let us know.
Right.
But once again, listening to everything we listened to, I don't have any problem with the putt-putt first. Do you have any questions?
No.
Do you have any?
Not directly related.
Anybody online? Who was online? Colin, he's an alternate. Okay.
No questions for me. Quick comments when we get there, though.
So you have no questions on the mini golf?
Correct.
Okay. Then I will need a motion to,
Mark, I would just note that, I did review the projects against the Section 306, the waterfront district regulations. As I've reviewed it, I did a separate review for each project. I just wanted to point out that, Mike had stated that the parking lots are essentially an accessory use and didn't necessarily be subject to Section 306, but I did review every element of the plan, including the parking areas, for compliance, and they are in compliance. The landscaping, the screening, those elements are in compliance.
okay. Thank you, Jake. So on the mini golf, we have a first, and I need a second.
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Okay, now we're at the Soaring Eagle. Once again, at the meeting, we've heard everything that was said, and it's pretty much the conditional on that, the height, that I'm assuming we will, we're all in favor of this, assuming that height variance or whatever, once they go over the, the last plans.
Yes.
But,
Yeah, and I was just going to ask, and certainly, as I mentioned, I will review the prior adjudication letter and discuss with Jake whether a new variance is required. Certainly will do that. And I'm just asking, I don't know if your planning commission is willing to consider approving it conditioned upon the
That's what we're probably gonna
variance.
do.
That way I don't
Yep.
have to come back before your commission. I just didn't know if that's,
we're gonna approve it, well, we're gonna vote to approve it on condition of the
gotcha.
variance.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
And once again, we already sat through the last meeting, so I don't think we have any more questions that they haven't asked, so.
Great. If you do, we're certainly here.
Yeah,
I would make a motion to approve the Soaring Eagle request, subject to a issuance of a new zoning variance or Jake and Mike coming to an understanding related to what was issued at the time of the hotel.
Okay, well, I'll second that.
And I think it ought also be conditioned upon the issuance of an easement from the city regarding crossing Front Street for the, which I don't think should be an issue, but let's get the i's crossed and the t's dotted.
Jake, was that brought up before? The crossing,
Yeah,
Yes.
it was brought up in the design review.
you know, in the design review?
Yeah, and we did meet, Mr. Sandberg met with myself and engineering to discuss that aerial easement.
Yeah.
I believe it looks like it might be maybe a 25-foot aerial easement
Correct.
at this point.
Yes, correct.
So that can be finalized with engineering.
Okay.
Right.
So I have a motion to grant this on the condition of the height, and I'm pretty sure that already got taken care of the, going over the, what's that, Front Street.
Yeah.
That was already, okay. So under that condition of the height, that's squared away.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all, appreciate
Aye.
it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Jake, we've got the subdivision and land development ordinance, preliminary recommendations on this?
Yes. I don't have anything to distribute to the planning commission members today on the
Okay.
Saldo Rex. I know we want to keep the conversation going, and basically I'm continuing to develop essentially those administrative procedures. One of the things that we did want to, there's some other models that we've been looking at. And in looking at, taking a second look at the city's existing subdivision ordinance, there are provisions in place for, review meetings and applications and things of that nature. So what I've been doing at this point is trying to create those documents that don't exist at this point, as far as,
Right.
the ordinance is there, there's language in the ordinance that establishes some of those administrative procedures, but they're not really written out in the form of an application, a checklist, the parties involved in the pre-application meetings. But one of the other things that we would be looking at would be a determination of, okay, which projects, from a land development perspective, not subdivisions. Our process, I did put together a kind of a fact sheet on the subdivisions. I didn't bring it with me today. That just explains that, and that's something I think we want to beef up the city's website to, just for a person who's interested in subdividing property or combining property, what's the process? What are the rules? Who looks at what? Because the planning commission does have to approve subdivisions, but the planning commission does not need to approve replots or lot consolidations. In the state of Pennsylvania, lot consolidations don't require municipal approval, and replots, where we're not creating any new lots, we're moving a lot line around, per the planning commission bylaws, don't require formal approval. The planning commission, the chair and secretary, of course, sign off on any subdivision plan, but this is something we kind of discussed last year as far as replots versus minor subdivisions. So that's pretty well squared away. I just want to get that kind of informational sheet out to a more public-facing portal. We don't have much on the subdivision ordinance that's on the website other than the ordinance itself.
Right.
From the standpoint of the design guidelines in the ordinance, in the Saldo, that's really going to require the city engineer's office to review the current design guidelines for the public improvements, streets, most particularly streets. I know I've had some conversation with the city engineer's office a couple times. They haven't really begun that formal review process, but if we're going to update the entire ordinance, that would be my suggestion, is make sure those design guidelines are up to speed. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
I had some other notes here on the saldo. I don't know how much time you guys have had to, kind of look at some of the information that we previously sent out. Lancaster was a good example of kind of that application process for land developments. And I think it makes sense for us to follow something similar.
Yeah.
And it kind of becomes a matter of creating those forms to get out, and then putting some process guide information together, somewhat similar to the waterfront conditional use process guide, because it's very similar.
Yeah.
It's just that those documents have not been put together in the past. So on the administrative side of things with the land development updates, I think we're moving in the right direction.
Good. Yeah.
Now, do you guys have any other, questions or comments about where we're at so far?
Well, we've got that, what do you want to call it? Someone's coming in to talk to us.
Training session.
The training session.
Education,
Yeah. Yeah. That's coming up, isn't it?
Yes.
In May?
Kathy is on the line if she wanted to talk a little bit more about the training that's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Training is scheduled for May 16th and May 17th. It's most likely going to be, one night will be Planning Commission and the other night will be Zoning Hearing Board. We haven't decided which meeting night will be for which group. But it'll be 3 hours, it'll be very in-depth. And we are partnering with Mill Creek Township and opening it up to staff as well and elected officials. Denny Pucco will come back. Many of you may have sat in with previous trainings with Denny Pucco, but he'll come back and provide that training to us. I think it'd be great to have an open discussion about saldos and best practices with Denny while he's here, so we'll make sure we put that on the agenda.
Sounds good. So you're going to let us know which one we could attend?
Yes, we'll decide which night and then send the invite.
Okay.
I'm waiting for a few more to respond before we decide, make a decision on which night will be Planning Commission and which night will be Zoning Hearing Board.
Okay.
There'll be an opportunity for you to zoom in case you can't come in person, but it will be in City Hall chambers.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment?
Just some FYI for the board. If you saw today's paper, the new $2.7 million bridge is just about complete behind the Soldiers and Sailors Home. And that was the key to the $100 million Bayfront movement from the present location into the railroad tracks. CSX ruled what this city was going to do because this PennDOT needed the right-of-way of the railroad to put the first roundabout in at Holland Street, and the second roundabout over at Sassafras. Those railroad tracks had been vacated a number of years ago. But a lot of people never knew that that $2.7 million bridge was the key for this development of the new Bayfront Parkway. A lot of money, so forth and so on. The other thing that the board may not be or may be familiar with is the Port Authority's plan to put a pedestrian bikeway from the Waterworks Hill from the Bayfront Parkway up to Sassafras and back down, if everybody knows where that is. Currently, there is a pedestrian crossing that was put in when the Bayfront Parkway was completed in front of the waterworks that facilitated the people from waterworks crossing in a safe manner. As I understand, those two light poles are in need of either replacement or whatever. But what I am concerned with is the safety of bringing people down from the top of Sassafras down to the bottom of the hill. The waterworks maintains a parking lot on the south side of the Bayfront. That distance entrance is about 40 feet. So people coming down, handicap and all, will make their way down to grade and then cross north to the first driveway to the corner, which will have a new sidewalk according to the plan that the Port Authority has for the pedestrians that come down to that area. Then they will have to walk 137 feet, which is about 45 yards west, to cross from the south side to the north side. And then if they're going towards State Street, they're going to have to walk back 45 yards to the driveway intersection of the Waterworks Department and cross over there and continue east. I asked a number of organizations, the boards of both the Water Department, the Port Authority, PennDOT and all, to consider the possibility of looking at the traffic light that's going to have to be removed from Sassafras that comes out of the Bayfront Parkway as a model to be moved to the intersection of the entrance to the waterworks, which is basically right across from the hill, and eliminate the pedestrian crossing 45 yards to the west and make it safer for people who come down that hill to cross in a safe mode and having the traffic stop right there instead of 45 yards back to the west and then people still coming down the hill. Now, there's some concern that PennDOT says, well, they have to warrant something of that nature, meaning they have to do studies and so forth and so on. But I think I don't know if that's come before you or if it would come before the planning on that particular plan that the Port Authority has in conjunction with PennDOT. So I bring that to your attention as a major safety issue, in my opinion, of having people come down the hill, cross a 40-foot driveway, go to a staging area with a sidewalk that if you measure the curb to the landscaping of the Water Authority property is 7.5 feet. The sidewalk that is in where the pedestrian crossing is now, there is a sidewalk on the south side that runs up behind Big Bertha, the building. That's when I measured, I think I had 4 foot 8 inches, so I'm just going to say 5 feet. If they put another sidewalk in from the corner back to that area, it's going to be very close for pedestrians and traffic walking from that new intersection back to the crossover. So whatever consideration that the board could look at, I'm just looking at it as safety, and now is the time I think some decision should be made. What that will do is facilitate, in my opinion, a safer crossing, plus getting in and out of the Water Authority property. It's just about impossible to make a left-hand turn when you're coming out of that facility to head towards State Street. And with the roundabouts and the lights being eliminated at Holland, State and Sassafras, you're going to have a constant line. As it stands now, the light on 8th and the Bayfront Country Fair releases at a time frame when the light at State Street is shut off, so people get ready to come from State Street down, and by the time they're there, the traffic from 8th Street has come there, so you have this crossing traffic, and I think it's going to get possibly worse in the future with the roundabouts out. So if you have any consideration or any input on that, I think I'll look at that intersection from a safety standpoint, if nothing else. Especially small kids. They're going to come down that hill, and they're not going to go back 45 yards at half a football field and cross, in my opinion, at that single traffic. They're going to look both ways at that corner and run across. The same situation occurs on 4th and Cranberry, which can be a problem, but my proposed solution, I mentioned Councilman Liz, is to put rumble strips in, like in Cleveland, when you're going to Dead Man's Turn, you start hitting those rumble strips and you wake up. So it might not be a big expense to look at that 4th and Cranberry intersection as a safety measure by just cutting grooves in it and alerting people that something's going to happen. But anyway, I just appreciate the board listening to that and for all the wisdom you guys have to do and so forth. And that building height and thing, when I went through the zoning with Scott's, they agreed to, because the height, to do something on. Now, my hearing isn't great and I couldn't see that chart on what they're proposing. Now, I know it's a golf course, but I can only tell you the golf course that was in existence was on a lot that was probably 60 feet by 300 feet. Just about a city block is what they had the 18-hole golf course on. And in the zoning, it was required that they have either 1 or 2 parking places for every hole. So it was 18 or 36, and they were proposing to use Wolverine Park as the parking lot for that golf course. And we defeated that, and the zoning hearing board recommended that people could park anywhere. They could park in Wolverine parking, but there would be no reserved places for them to qualify. So that's how the zoning hearing board refereed the parking allotment in that regard.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
All right, any other public comment? Did you see any up there? I didn't see any.
No other attendees on Zoom.
One thing it does, I guess this cable or whatever Scott wants to put over Front Street, keep in mind that Front Street is going to be in front of the library once the construction starts on the roundabout at Holland. That traffic coming over the Bayfront is going to be in front of the library, the hotel, and then across State Street. And that's probably going to go on for a good 1.5 years to maybe 2 years. So whatever you're going to string over that, I don't know if the PennDOT and the city is going to restrict semis on the Bayfront Parkway from 6th Street down.
I was going to say, it's way high.
Okay,
It's way high.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're putting on the smokestack and everything.
Yeah, I think that the height of that cable as it passes over West Front might be somewhere around 80 feet high.
Yeah.
60 to 80 feet high.
80 feet would be basically as high as the convention center crossover is from the convention center to the Sheridan Hotel. To give you some idea,
Yeah.
I think that's about 79 or 80 feet, something
Yeah.
like that.
All right. Okay, thank you. There's no other public comment on Zoom, then I make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Aye.
Thank you.